let me introduce Scott Heiferman. Scott is a lifelong entrepreneur. He started companies you probably haven't heard of. One called Direct Deck. He started a radio show called Relapse, and then in 1995 he started a company called iTraffic, which was one of the very first online advertising companies. It was given many prestigious awards, including one of the top 10 ad agencies by Ad Age. Very, very successful company. In 2002, he started two more companies. One was Photolog, which has about 32 million members and almost a billion photos uploaded. Anyone ever used Photolog in here? Okay, this is a big, huge company, awesome company. And in the same year, as if he didn't have enough to do, he also started Meetup.com, which we're going to hear about. Meetup now has over 10 million members, probably several million more than that, and they've got I think sometimes in their tweets they've said that recently that they get over 10,000 meetups in a single day. So imagine getting 10,000 users in a day, or 1,000 users, and then times that by how many events you've got. Pretty amazing. And Scott has flown all the way from New York for the Startup Grind. So let's give him a big round of applause, Startup Grind style, for Scott Heiferman.
I'm not Michael Jackson. Moonwalk.
Hey, so thanks for coming out.
You bet. You bet. This is really, really impressive.
Everyone Meetup members in here? Who's a Meetup member? Everybody. Awesome. That's so cool.
They wouldn't have found the address if.
Well, yeah, it's like if you go to Plancast and it's never updated right. So, well, we want to cover a number of things. We want to talk about Meetup specifically and kind of people's feedback on that and things people are wondering about Meetup specifically. We're all users of it, and we at Startup Grind love Meetup.com for a number of reasons, which we'll talk about. But I wanted to just start out and talk a little bit about just general entrepreneurship, founding companies, and your background in that. What's your motivation behind being an entrepreneur? You've been an entrepreneur your whole life. What has been the driving force behind that?
I've never really given much thought to what it means to be an entrepreneur, or thought of myself as an entrepreneur, or even said I want to be an entrepreneur. I've never sat around saying like, oh, I want to start a company. What should I start? It's always been the kind of situation where you become you fall in love with an idea, you become obsessed with something, you're trying to solve some problem, or you want something to exist, and you say, no, this has got to exist, this has got to happen, that the world will suck if this doesn't come to be. And so so I guess that makes you an entrepreneur, but I never sort of I've never thought like, oh, I'm gonna have a career called being an entrepreneur, or thought about the nature of it. It's just fun to try to solve problems and pursue these things that you become obsessed with.
What you see, you're in New York City. You see a lot of trends. What is some of the scariest trends that you're seeing, or do you see any red flags with entrepreneurs today versus 5 or 10 years ago? What kinds of trends are you seeing?
What's scary?
Yeah, are you seeing any kind of concerning trends or?
No, I think this is an exciting time. It's easier than ever to build things. I think it's a real interesting environment. For at least actually, speaking of New York, I've been interviewing people to hire them for 15, 16, 17 years in New York, and never before have I had the experience that I've had recently in the past few months, which is I'll be interviewing an engineer, and I'll say, and they'll say, I just moved to New York, or I'm thinking of moving to New York, and I say why, and in the past, it's always been some sort of story like, well, I have to move to New York from Silicon Valley because my wife is, or some like sort of thing. But now or my husband, but I've gotten like a number of people recently where they say, well, New York is just where you have to be if you're interested in a certain kind of internet. I'm not trying to spark a coastal
Yeah,
war
East Coast,
here,
West Coast,
but
man. You won't make it out of here.
But I'll just say, New York has really sucked for a long time in terms of, super heartfelt, great consumer internet, awesome stuff. And finally, it's starting to really be. You've got Foursquare, you've got Etsy, you've got Kickstarter, you've got Tumblr, you've got Meetup, you've got a bunch of things where Fab, yep. But there's a I think a style of internet that is working well in New York. I can talk about if you want. But
yeah, sure. I mean, what's special? What makes what makes New York City special for those types of companies? What makes it unique?
I think that obviously Silicon Valley and the Bay Area has always just made the best stuff and has made there's no Facebook, there's no Twitter, there's no Google coming out of New York yet, but I think what is special, the reason why New York is doing really well right now is because the style is that there's a, in New York people are smashed together, and people smell.
Yeah, we know.
And there's there's kind of an urban type of style where people are figuring out how do we collaborate, how do we cooperate, how do we really, Etsy, it's this DIY marketplace, and Foursquare, it's about running into friends as they're out and about town, and Meetup is about putting people together and not having this hermetically sealed screen-based world, and that's what's getting interesting.
So, do you hear a lot of people that are? I mean, we hear here. How many people have moved to Silicon Valley from somewhere else to start a company? Raise your hand. Okay. So I'd say we hear about this a lot. There's constantly people moving here to start a company. Do you hear about a lot of people moving from Silicon Valley to New York to start companies or to get involved?
That's what we're seeing a lot of right now. That's what we're seeing, and again, it's just like wow, that's new.
Yeah. What and by the way, let me just mention we're on Twitter at Startup Grind, and you can hashtag Startup Grind, and Scott is at HEIF, and I'm Derek J. Anderson. So let's. I wanted to ask you: Do you think Meetup could have been started here? Could have been started in Palo Alto? Have you ever thought about that? What would Meetup look like as a Silicon Valley company?
I think Meetup would be a lot less messy.
More lawsuits?
No. No. I really mean. I think that I think that Meetup would probably be less messy and more. And a little more perfect and a little more clean, and that's not what Meetup is about. It's because we're building, just like building companies is messy, building communities are messy. And I should just say really clearly, we're not in Meetup isn't in the event business. You can go start an event on Eventbrite anytime. We're not also in there's a lot of things we're not. These are communities, and so I think to answer your question about, why I think New York was a good home for Meetup is just because it's rich of with community.
Yeah.
And not to I don't mean to be the guy just like glorifying New York here. It's really not all that great. But
do you think had Meetup been here, do you think it would have grown faster?
That's a good question. I don't know. Does anyone have a good answer to that? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the we always struggle to we're it's always the struggle to hire,
sure.
And there's a lot more talent here. So the answer might be yes.
So tell us a little bit about how Meetup came to be. When was the idea for Meetup born? Before you started it in 2002.
So I, as you mentioned, I was in the ad business, and I realized soon after getting into that world that I hated it. Yeah. And I didn't know what I wanted, and the company grew, and it got some success, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I was completely lost. And I'm sorry to be talking about New York again, but it's part of this story. So I promise, once we get past this story, I'll hopefully not have to, mention it anymore. But we, so I was living in downtown Manhattan when 9/11 happened, and I had the experience that any of you guys in New York then? A few of you? So you may have had the same experience I had, which was for a little bit there, New York became a pretty friendly place. Maybe that didn't last very long, but no, there. My experience is I talked to more neighbors in the days after 9/11 than I had in recent years of living in New York, having moved to New York from Iowa a few years earlier, and it really struck me, this idea of, oh, holy shit, neighbors could talk to each other, and that maybe the internet isn't just about this virtual community or being friends with people around the world, but that actually maybe the internet could help people get off the internet and interact locally better. And so Meetup was a really simple idea. Not the first one to have it, not going to be the last one to have it, but I basically put together a great team of 5 guys. We locked ourselves in a tiny room for a few months with a design goal of how can we make it really easy for people to organize a gathering about anything, anywhere. And we didn't know what people would use it for, and we didn't know, and most of what people do use it for, we didn't imagine, and what we thought they were going to use it for, they didn't use it for, and so
Sure.
That's the long story short.
And you guys developed it for how long? How long were you locked away?
So we started building. I was developing the idea in the days after 9/11. Finally, sort of locked ourselves in a room in about January, February of 2002, and then got it out the door by June.
And did you? I mean, at this point, you're an experienced entrepreneur. You've had failures. You've also had some big successes. So, what did you with this new idea? Did you have pushback from people that said, "Hey, this isn't going to work. This has been tried before,"
Yeah.
or was it all, "Hey, well, wow, here's serial entrepreneur going at it again. Let's get behind him."
Yeah, I know this is such a cliche, but yeah, really, everyone said it was a stupid idea.
Literally.
It really was this this is partly because, this is also, think, to those of you that are old enough for this, it was 2002, the bubble had burst, the internet was dead, the internet is stupid, especially anything that's community oriented was really, really stupid. And so the idea, even to this day, most people, we are early in this game. It's great. It's wonderful that 10 million people have signed up, and we get these, every minute there's 50 RSVPs to a meetup 24/7. So it's really validating to see oh wow, this is cool. But no, the vast majority of people still think it's stupid. And so we're on the early part of this revolution, which is to say, how do people sort of wake up to the idea that other people aren't scary, that other people, that there may be a reason to actually want to talk to a stranger or meet people you don't know, and not just because they might give you money or you might get laid. That there are a lot of things in your life, that can be made better by connecting with people around some common interest.
Have you guys ever considered, or at least recently, just listening to those people, that maybe it is stupid? Is that something you've considered listening to?
Oh, I listen to that all the time. No, I love
Trust me, I don't think it's stupid. I'm just wondering, we have people say our ideas are stupid every single day. I have somebody tell me my ideas are stupid.
Yeah.
So
sometimes they are.
Yeah, usually they are. 100%. They're dumb.
Yeah. Actually, on that note, it was interesting. I read an interview with that Mark Zuckerberg when he was offered $1 billion early on from Viacom for Facebook, and they said, why didn't you take it? He said, well, I probably won't have a better idea for the rest of my life. So what else would I do with the rest of my life? So I might as well just work on that idea. So yeah, sometimes they're good. Good idea.
When you've talked about that too with this, you've talked about this being potentially your last startup. What does that mean exactly? That Meetup could be your last startup? Is it because you're sick of it?
You've done a lot of homework.
Well, I'm not that busy during the day, so I just watch videos of you constantly. So is it because you have this very long-term look on the company? Is it because this is it? This is the last thing you'll have energy to do and become a VC, or what?
No. It means that Meetup sucks too much, and it's really a great product, but like, oh my God, the things that could make it really, really great are so friggin' hard and are gonna take so long to do that I might as well just focus on doing that for a long time. So it's really what it's saying is that what I mean by this, and I wish this for everyone here, that you get to work on something where it gets more interesting over time. I mean, I've never worked on anything where, like, the general idea is that it gets less interesting over time. But no, this one, you say, like, wow, God, Meetup really could do this amazing job at connecting people better and having the meetups go better and having people find the meetups that they would really love to find and wow, all the things that you could do to facilitate, the communities being stronger. And so, hell, life and work and success is just about getting to work on something that you think's important or is worth doing and is interesting and will help people. And so the reason why I say that Meetup might be my last startup is because, like, there's just so much fertile ground to make great stuff.
What percent of your concept of Meetup do you think exists in the product today?
Oh man, like, actually, it's so funny. Can I let me tell you a quick story about that. A few years ago, I stood up in front of the company. We're like an 80-person company, half engineering, half not. And I stood up in front of the company, and I said, I think we're 5% done with what this whole thing could be. And I found out later
engineering quit.
No. I found out a lot of people were, like, really pissed off, and I completely presumed that they were pissed off because they had, like, we like worked so hard, and that they think and that Scott thinks we're just 5% done, and that how could he say that it's so low? I swear to God, like, it was only, like, weeks later that I realized that I heard that we weren't pissed off because you said it was so low. We were pissed off that you said it was so high, that they thought it was lower than 5%, and that was totally awesome because it means that and by the way, can I just that notion of, can I ask you guys this notion of, like, just being able to work on something, is that, to those that show up for a startup grind meetup, like, is that your dream? Like, or is and I, it's okay to not raise your hand on that, or is the dream to be able to, is part of the career that you want to definitely be able to work on completely new stuff frequently? How many people just would be fine working on something for 20 years if they thought that it was really, really worth their time? Okay. And then how many just say, like, no, that's not the goal because I will definitely get too bored? Okay, that's interesting.
Half and half.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit, going back to the beginning of Meetup, and a lot of these questions came from people that submitted them. I don't have the names with me, but we really appreciate them. How did you overcome the cold start problem with Meetup? So you launched this thing. How did you get your first 100 meetups? How did you get your first 100 users? What did you guys do?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's actually probably just about the only really interesting thing that I've got to say. And that is,
we can shut it down after it's done.
And that is, so Meetup, if we would have launched, actually, you know what? You know why Palo Alto Meetup would have probably failed in Palo Alto? Because if you got 100 smart people and you said, start meetup.com, here's how they would do it. They would build a really awesome application that is what you think Meetup is, and they would have two big buttons that say find a meetup and start a meetup, and they would try to get the whole world to come there to start a meetup, and that's not what, and it would last 6 months and then go out of business. We didn't do it that way because I knew that would go out of business quick. So here's what we did. We designed it from the start to be around this concept of a meetup day, an international meetup day around X, and X would be anything. So we basically preloaded it with 1,000 topics and 1,000 cities. Topics being like photography, chihuahuas, whatever. And then every city. And what we basically did was we programmed it to, essentially we acted like we were Hallmark. And you know what Hallmark does? They invent holidays. So we declared International Chihuahua Meetup Day. And in every city, those 1,000 cities, we said Chihuahua Meetup Day is happening here and here and here. And so we basically, so what's 1,000 times 1,000? a million. So we basically faked a million meetups, but we didn't fake it. We just said, hey,
This
we
is happening.
propose these million meetups. And by the way, we never said, oh, there has to be an organizer or anything. We just said we hand coded 70,000 venues into the system across all these 1,000 cities. And we put up 3 of them, and we said, if you're interested in Chihuahua Meetup Day and you're in Paris, here's 3 places that it might be at. Vote on which one you want it to be. If, in 99% of those million cells, there was not 4 people who were interested, so we emailed them and said, sorry, it's off, maybe next month, and put it on this monthly cycle.
Sure.
And
sure.
But enough of them took off, and what was really powerful about that, and I guess the lesson is
awesome.
is that specific thing probably has 0 relevancy to what you're working on or thinking about or your work or your projects. But there's a principle in there. The principle is, the goal was, how do you make it really, 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 really easy for people to register that little bit of interest that they might have. I'm not going to start the Chihuahua meetup in Paris, but sure enough, I'll say, yeah, I'm interested, and I'll pick and I'll vote on the venue. The other thing that's really important there is to know that this is all about appealing to people's self-interest. And so, so back then it was, if you're in the Chihuahua community and you run a Chihuahua blog, you're gonna love spreading the word about International Chihuahua Meetup Day. Today, if you start a meetup group, it's in your interest to really want to see it succeed. So you promote it, and then when all the meetups are being promoted by all the people who care about them, it just makes the whole network grow and all boats rise, and everyone, more meetups win. And that's, we're really about wanting to see, everyone win.
Well, it's a great marketing thing too that directly relates back to your product, and it makes your product better, right? It's not you didn't do a big ad campaign in Times Square. You created buzz, and you created virality and interest around things within your own product, and I'm sure the Chihuahua blogs were buzzing about Chihuahua.
Yeah, and
Day.
at the end, all those words, there's virality, there's buzz, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it wasn't like in pursuit of buzz or marketing strategy. It was in pursuit of, man, those Chihuahua owners in San Jose are gonna love this, and it's going to get them together.
Yeah.
And it's about them. It's not about us. And we say, wow, if we really want these meetups to happen, this is really going to do it, and people are going to love it.
In the early stages of meetups founding, how did you guys address the risk of an open website where strangers were actually meeting together? This is right after 9/11. How did you guys address that? I'm sure it was a huge concern.
Well, that was one of the many reasons why people thought it was stupid was for that, and I can't tell you, the sort of the initial press we got, they were all centered around the pedophiles and axe murderers that were going to show up at all the
Axe Murder Day. Well, I can't believe you guys organized that.
Right. Right. Well, no, they would just show up at your meetup, no matter what it is.
There's some here tonight.
And it really is a one of the we a few months after the company got started, I got an email from the speaking of Michael Jackson, the Elvis of our industry, that being Pierre Omidyar, who founder of eBay, who said, "Oh, I love what you're doing," and he said to me something that was really powerful. He says, anything that has the potential to do good is going to have this potential to do bad, and you can't, you got to just focus on the good.
I'd love to.
Oh, and I'm sorry. Pierre also said people are generally good. That's a sort of ethos that of eBay, and so that really is so important. I mean, yeah, there's bad apples, but like you have to see the world as people being generally good, because it's we wouldn't have gotten this far as a species if that weren't true. Granted, in many ways we're fucked, but that's. But on the whole,
Maybe
like, this is amazing. Look at this room. We have electricity. This microphone works. It's things work out.
And he's an investor in your company as well, right? He's somebody that's been a big champion for you guys.
Yeah.
So the site. Many of you maybe don't know this, but the site at one point was completely free, right? And this is a big pivotal point that you guys had in your company. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about it. So at some point you changed that, and where organizers paid for, maybe you all don't know this, but Spencer and I pay a fee each month. You can clap for that if you want.
Hey, actually, I should clap for that.
Yeah, it's good.
It paid for my clothes.
Your cool shirt. So tell us about that decision. What went into that decision? How difficult was it? And then what happened after you made that decision to go from free to paid model?
I guess the long story short there, if you want me to expand, I will, is we found ourselves in this situation, which was people were we sort of took off, and people were creating meetups left and right, and a lot of them were really crappy. And it was so easy to just start a meetup, and what happened was that people would sign up for meetups that the organizer wasn't all that interested in or invested in, and they would have a bad experience, and everyone would have a bad experience all around. And so one of my heroes is Craig Newmark, and from Craigslist, and Craig's model of basically saying, hey, when you got a spam problem in the real estate and job categories for him, he said, well, if you Craigslist started charging, and it fixed the spam problem. So it was a revenue model that also doubled as a quality filter and a product enhancer. And so we just took this bold move, which upset a whole lot of people, and we just went, sort of cold turkey, whole hog into it. Like there was no kind of like free meetups and paid meetups. We just said, screw it. Let's just see if the people are really care about their meetups enough to have skin in the game, and make us have a sustainable revenue model that would make it so that meetup wouldn't get screwed up and filled up with ads and other crap. And so in the end, it's worked out really well.
And what was the team's reaction? I mean, so the day after you switched that, was it just like jumping off of a cliff? In terms of
I
your
mean,
traffic
just imagine, you start something that has like this crazy amount of activity, and we basically lost over 90% of our activity as a result of flipping that switch. And now you could, today you could say, well, there are better ways to measure, to de-spam it, and better ways to have reputation, and and what if we didn't do that? Would Meetup be much bigger? All I know is that if we're focused on building a great product, and we keep the price really low, so we charge, it's about $10 to $15 a month for the
12 if you buy the bulk package.
Yeah. For the and so we have 99% of the people using Meetup, like you guys not paying for it, but 1% using it, and it lets us be profitable with with a staff of 80, and just naturally grows on itself, and the spam problem is much less. What was the question again?
How scared was the team?
Oh, the team was it was scary, but that's the game, like that's startups are not meant to be. Startups are aren't easy.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because by pretty much all accounts you had this very interesting, successful product, and then you guys basically fired the majority of your users, or you changed the rules to probably save yourself in the end. But it seems like the greatest decision you could have ever made. But it's interesting. I mean, that experience of being successful and then realizing we're having the wrong success.
Well, I guess in there is like a really, I think, important takeaway for everyone, which is you have to kind of ask yourself, what are you really in business for, or what's the real goal here? And it was around that time as we started seeing these amazing stories from the good meetups, and you'd see that, boy, a good meetup really, people start businesses coming out of good meetups. They start bands. They find friends. They all this good stuff happens, and so you say, that's when it really crystallized for us. It said, wow, we're in business to see good meetups happen and for these communities to emerge. And wow, wouldn't it be amazing if there was a meetup everywhere about most everything? And you look at the actual, you got to really face reality and say, okay, now let's look at the actual activity happening here. And you say, this is not, if it's 95% crap,
yeah.
we could. Here's the point. you could easily sell crap to investors, or you can sort of flower it up, or you can try to get someone to buy the company because, wow, look at all these page views or something. But you really got to be true to what's the heart of it. What are you really trying to do, and what's the dream? And the dream wasn't just to pull some swindle. The dream was to make something real and to let stuff like this really happen.
I wanted to just talk a little bit about Startup Grind's experience and then kind of talk about Meetup's community, which is, it's really, in my opinion, is a crown jewel. When we started Startup Grind, Spencer and I, we started about 18 months ago, and we were just kind of, hey, let's get some friends together, let's do it in my office, and we probably had 10 or 12 guys and or persons there, and we'd get our friends. We had some VCs that were friends of ours. They'd come speak and talk about how they'd never invest in anything under $100 million, and everyone's just like, oh my gosh. And this dinky little office, and then we tried to manage this group of people. And so we used email, and then we used Google Groups, and then we used Google Wave, which you will laugh, but there are some cool tools there. But no one uses Google Wave. So and then we used Evite. Heaven forbid that lasted like a day. And then, we literally tried, I felt like we tried everything. There's 10 other things we tried. And then we finally found Meetup, and we had kind of figured out the format that we wanted to do. And within literally about 60 days, we had this amazing community in our office. My office is 1,000 square feet. It was chock full of people, standing room only. Who was here in that first Meetup? Raise your hand if you were here the first Meetup. That's amazing to me. Yeah, let's give these guys a round of applause. So that was a year ago, and all of those people that raised their hand, I mean, I know them all now quite well, but I didn't know any of them at the time. And that to me has always been the sweet sauce of Meetup, which we just love, and I'm happy to pay $12 a month, at 6 months at a time, is because it's worth.
I love that it's cheap. I mean,
it is cheap. It's way cheap. Yeah, I'm just joking about the price, but the community, the people that it brought in were quality, amazing people that are now my good friends, and they were people that Spencer and I would have never found otherwise. And I wonder, it's one of the few sites that I use that has at least tech sites that has a real community. And I wonder, how in the world does somebody who wants to build a community on their site, where do you even begin? How does that even start? How do you build an amazing community like Meetup? But how do you start to build something like that?
Well, I mean, there's no universal answer. You're saying generally that's sort of that cold start question.
Yeah, but specifically community. Like, how did you guys?
Right.
Is it the Chihuahua thing? I mean, do you feel like that's what it was? Because I'm not sure that's what it was. I don't know what it is, but there's something there.
I think that word community is probably the most overused word that means either nothing or different things to everyone who hears it. And sure as hell, I wouldn't have been able to define that word, even when I set out to be in the community business. But, if there's one thing that I've learned, I saw, by the way, in your description of this event that you said we have 60 million RSVPs. We're actually coming up on 100 million RSVPs, awesome. and 10 million meetups. A big thing that I've learned about that is that, for all meetups like this are great, but there's another kind of meetup that I like better, and it is the kind that actually we know generates a real sense of community, and that is that when you guys are all in rows here and you're looking at me, and which is sort of a microcosm of the whole the 20th century as a whole, which is people looking to big media and looking to big finance and big industry and big pharma and big food, and there's kind of this like disconnection that spread throughout the 20th century, as opposed to a kind of connection where people are turned to each other. And so that may sound kind of cliched, but it's a really simple and obvious, but yet but underappreciated and understood concept, which is literally people being, facing each other. That the heart of the revolution of what is Facebook and Twitter is that people are turning to each other. That's what they're buying and selling from each other. They're starting to fund each other on Kickstarter, and they're teaching each other on Skillshare, and it's this turning to each other. So I would even commandeer your meetup for a minute here and make sure that do you mind if I do this?
Yeah, okay.
Which is, you might be sitting. I want you to just take a minute to say hello to someone around you right now that you haven't met yet, and just say and just say why you're here, and take a minute to do that.
Great. This is better. Better coming from you.
That's community.
My background is a gamer. Yeah, I worked at EA for 5 years. I haven't seen. This is like a gaming community, like crazy. Like gamers are crazy people. They're awesome crazy people. They're so passionate.
What's your background?
What's that?
How
I worked at EA for 5 years. Social, and I think it's because the physicality of the product. I don't know, like you can actually touch the meetup. You can feel it. And that's what a good brand is. I don't, like you can touch a game, you go buy it at the store, and then you like tell someone you pwn them on your mic. I don't know what it is, but I don't know. That's my background on community. How long what do you think? Let him go. This is good.
So, sorry to cut you short here. I guess I should let
Scott's politely telling you to shut up. Just shut up.
Yo. So in conclusion, it
$100 to the first person that.
I see far too many meetups where they get big like this and people shuffle in and they see the show and they shuffle out and they don't actually meet people, and that wasn't the point. What's that? Yeah. That wasn't the point of meetup. It's that community emerges when people are turning to each other, and it's not just like people as audience or spectator or passenger.
This question comes from the app. What mistake did you learn from the most, and why? It's from Patrick. Thank you, Patrick.
Mistake. Wow. There's been a lot of them, but I think that the mistakes tend to be, if you're working with people and they're not working out, and you don't have the guts to admit that it's not working out, and not parting ways with people who would be better off being somewhere else. So that's a big one.
How many people? This is also from the meetup from Perry. How many people attended the first meetup?
I don't know. I don't know what the first meetup was, but I don't know. But I do have a good little tiny story from like an early meetup, which was one of the. I bring up this Chihuahua thing because I remember the first photo of like a big meetup that I saw. We just launched this website out there, not thinking about dogs or anything, and all of a sudden get this photo of like the 20 people in Everett, Washington, who at this Chihuahua meetup, and it's like these. Just ugly people with ugly dogs, and
I was at that meetup,
and so here, actually, this is what I did for years. I would when I would be interviewing people to hire them, I would have this picture in my wallet, and I would take the picture out of my wallet, and I would show them this picture of like these smiling people and smiling dogs of ugly people, and it was a total litmus test. It was basically that if they didn't smile looking at this crazy human cacophony of just goodness here, and if they just were really serious about it, we did not hire them. But if they smiled, I said, okay, they might have been hired.
That's awesome. You still have that picture or no?
I do have it, but it got so wrinkled and beat up from being coming in and out of my wallet all week that I never got it reprinted. And so now I just tell the story and give away. The
people
secret.
Get uglier each time. So these questions come from, and we're going to take some questions from the audience. These questions come specifically from organizers and other people that responded to us. One of the common criticisms of Meetup, and I honestly have to say, as somebody that uses the platform a lot over the last year, this is not my criticism. There are very few criticisms of Meetup, and I'm not just saying that. But one of them is the RSVP system by some people and you guys have changed it over time, right? You had yes, no, maybe, and people kind of say like, it might be there, it might not. You just have to see. But you've changed it to yes, no, and then there's this huge, like we have 550 people RSVP to this Meetup. We've probably got 250 here tonight. So what have you guys done to try and solve it? I know you guys think a lot about it and try to fix it or do things for it. What is the issue with that?
The
people saying
maybe
they're coming?
Question, or the flake factor?
The flake factor.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a biggie, and we there's a lot that we want to invent around solving that. Actually, because there are a lot of Meetup organizers and people who are fairly active. I want to actually get your feedback on an idea that we're considering that's controversial, and actually your feedback would be good, which is should we be tipping off? Should we let organizers basically say that people who have flaked X number of times can't, in any Meetup across the network, can't RSVP for your Meetup? Yes? Really? And let me hear the no's. No. Yeah, so so
a flaky bar, a flake meter. That's what you get from our audience. A flake meter. It's awesome.
Actually, come on. I don't want to hijack this. So come up to me after if you got strong thoughts about that. So, but generally speaking, there's a lot of interesting. There are a lot of meetups that they will charge just to reduce the flake factor, and in some cases they'll say you pay $5 on the site to RSVP, and if you show up, you get a $5 bill, just as a
incentive.
Just as a incentive to just not, if the RSVP is free, then people are more likely to flake. And there's a lot of, again, this is part of the what we think there's a lot to invent around. But if anyone's got ideas, let me know. Yep.
There's a lot of trends towards less email. Facebook has kind of spearheaded this, I think, in the last few months, where they basically shut off all notifications unless you want them. And how important is email to make your system work? And what are the plans for decreasing or increasing?
It's critical for making it work, but it is our number one problem and number one priority. We have millions of people getting way too much email about meetups that they have no interest in, and we have millions of people getting no email, and are thus really missing out on the meetups that they would love to find. And so this is our enemy number one, big dev focus that has actually really just started in the past few weeks, and it's going to be a focus for many months.
We had a couple of organizers complain about posts in discussion boards or forums not getting enough visibility. Do you guys? Is that an emphasis for you to support those, or what is your?
We definitely want to be thinking open sky about how people want to talk to each other online, mobile friendly and all. We are we're totally open-minded, but with a focused goal of seeing the kind of community emerge that people want to have happen out of meetups.
This one is from our app. What do you do to motivate yourself every day to grind forward? This is from Patrick.
That's a good one. You know, the for me, and I hope that all of you get to work on things that have a version of this, which is, you know, I browse the site, you know, and I know that I'm lucky that I get to be able to do that. And for those of you that are, you know, in startup mode and are trying to get that activity going, you know, that may not be there, but you know, for whatever activity you've got and whatever you're doing, you have to actually really just look at it and either love it or do something else. And by that, I don't just mean like the guts of the product. I mean like how are people using it. And so, you know, for me, I get an email every day there's about 30 or 40 meetups that hit a member milestone threshold of like 1,000 members or 500 members or 250, and you know, sometimes I'll just, you know, congratulate a bunch of them, but really, you know, at the end of the day, like,
You never congratulated us.
I
really make a sad
will.
sound.
What's the next threshold?
But you came here, so we really were pumped about that.
Hey, Derek.
That was much better.
Hey, Derek, congratulations. And, yeah.
We get that?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. I'm gonna show it to my wife later. She's gonna be pumped. Where is Meetup biggest outside of the U.S. and Canada? This is from the app as well.
We're 80% U.S., 20% outside, and I'm hoping that, you know, come back in a year or two, that'll be at least 50-50. You know, U.S. non-U.S. There are just strange pockets of activity in different places. But the U.K. is London's our fastest growing city, and without any kind of, you know, it just happens that way. It's also really odd that if you go to you know, whereas the average city has maybe, you know, 3 to 5% of the population being a member of a meetup, you have these strange cities like Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, where 15% of the population is a member, and like you go to Raleigh, Durham, and like meetup is just like really common part of culture, and you'd say why? I don't know. Chihuahuas.
The bald Chihuahua
Ugly
meetup
people
is a huge trend. Do we have any questions from the audience? Does anyone want to ask a question? Yeah.
By the way, we don't have to talk about just meetup. You know, if there's stuff that what you're, yeah, whatever. Yes, sir.
How did you get the word out to people?
You know, there was a
topics?
little bit of like trying to
1,000
drop
meetups.
hints at different, you know, blogs and stuff, but there wasn't much of that. We really just sort of trusted that that if, you know, that if enough of our friends or people sort of landed on these things, that it would spread, and that if someone signed up for that Chihuahua meetup day, they would see, oh wow, there's also a Moms of Twins meetup, and that they would, you know, and that would be interesting to them, and you know, try to let it be easily browsable.
Yeah. So, and just on that, the majority of your meetups
Was that funny for some reason?
We got a good laugh in there somewhere. Who was it? Somebody really liked it. What was it? Perry? Let's give Perry a round of applause for a kind of massive laugh there.
Trying to imagine like a mom of twins with twin chihuahuas? Or?
So the majority of your meetups are actually not tech meetups, right? I mean, they are these types of, you know, very, you know, like what are the major demographics?
Yeah, I'm curious
of
for this crowd. How many? What percent of the meetups do you think are like tech, startup, entrepreneur at all related? Tech related. 25. Okay. Yeah, so it's more about this between 1 and 5%. And which is so funny because, you know, it means we're doing something wrong, which is that if you're in that bubble, you don't see what's, you know, you don't see what's outside the bubble, because there might be stuff that other people in your family or friends might be interested in that you could tip them off to. But yeah, no, when you're in a moms meetup, you think meetup is just moms. If you're in a hiking meetup, you think, you know, a lot of people just think it's about hiking, and which means that we're not doing our job right of cracking the code on how to make sure the sort of discoverability and browsability is easy.
Or maybe it is. Maybe it means you are doing your job right because it's not a tech site. You know, you've been able to get way outside the tech early adopter crowd, yeah. and I mean, we all use it. So I think there is a subset that do, but there's very few sites, I think, that, that are able to do that. So that's maybe
You
that's
know-
because
you know
of New
what's
York.
funny,
Maybe
though?
that's the New York influence. I don't know.
What's funny is that the typical thing is, you appeal to the tech and the early adopters and then cross that chasm to the normals, as they say. But in fact, with us, we were more popular not in tech at all. In fact, like only right now, like the growth in Silicon Valley tech meetups is really, really strong, and I don't know why.
You're looking at it.
Yeah, well, yes, because of great organizers like you.
It's because of them.
Yeah. But I guess what it just goes to show is that there's no normal path to the growth of any startup. There's no, the only rule is there's no rules. I mean, there are people who would tell you that you've got to first appeal to the hardcore.
Scoble. You have to get Scoble.
Yeah, you got to get Scoble, and then, it'll go to the moms. No, for us, it's like, the moms have, finally crushed Scoble over to...
Well, and those double strollers, the twin strollers, trampled him.
Just roll them right over.
Yeah, right here.
What was your original greatest source? You said that it happened organically. Congratulations. But what was was it the organizers, or did you guys do outreach? Or I understand you get your initial friends joining the site, and we have the Chihuahua meetups and
Yeah.
things like that. But what would you attribute the greatest source of growth?
So what was the greatest source of growth for your
You
site?
it was I'm sorry if this is like kind of sounds simplistic or I'm not answering it directly, but it's being actually there's another sort of it's being just really useful to some people. Being so damn useful to some people that they have to use it. And there's another sort of Pierre Omidyar-ism in this, which is, he didn't expect by the way, the whole Pez dispenser eBay story is a myth. Like the Pez dispensers and Beanie Babies, and the way he'll explain it is he says, it's just there was a vacuum in the market. Like it was needed in those community, in the Pez dispenser and Beanie Baby community for. And by the way, Robert Scoble didn't start
one of the
eBay.
first bidders.
The point there is that there were these weird pockets for us of like ex Jehovah's Witnesses and pagans and I don't know these Chihuahuas. Like there was all these odd categories that those weren't our friends, but it just goes to show that really our our job is to make something great for people, and it's going to be really, really great for a certain kind of people, and then hopefully it spreads, and so you can't predict who it's useful for. So we did what? No, we did not cater to them at all. We put it out there and
See who
yeah,
would
and then
would
this
stick
guy,
with.
then this crazy governor of Vermont decided he was going to run for president and had supporters all over the place named Howard Dean, and that sort of
guy
and
was
became
crazy.
useful there.
Yeah,
what's that?
I just said he was crazy.
Yeah.
But he had this great grassroots movement, right? And they were organizing those people and.
Yeah, and that carries through to today. People don't realize how Meetup is the backbone of the Tea Party, and also, there's 2,000 Occupy Wall Street city, plants of the
They're
Occupy
organizing-
movement uses.
They're organizing through Meetup.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, if you go to meetup.com/occupy together, you'll see that the people have planted themselves in 2,000 cities.
Wow.
And it's a really interesting portal to what's going on in that whole movement. Again, just organically works.
Let's take a couple more questions. Sure.
All right. Yeah, I think that making sure that they talk to each other sounds simple, but is so often not done. People need permission to talk to each other. They need license to talk to each other. I don't care what kind of work all of you are doing, but you are probably in a stronger position than you realize to get people to talk to each other. And I think that, to be also specific for you, is asking people why they're there and what they're hoping to get out of it in the context of a meetup like that is it's just really powerful. I've seen it be something that works.
Great. Yeah.
Hey, Scott, really congratulations on 8% of your, U.S. penetration. So you must have.
Be sure to speak up so people can hear you.
So
Yeah.
with Meetup, it must have really good fabric within the U.S. Do you really see within your data of how U.S. is changing in terms of, social groups and things like that? And does your information get shared with the government?
Is your data on how people are organizing in the U.S., and this is going to be our last question, is it changing over time, and do you share that information with Big Brother?
Well, we don't overtly share anything with Big Brother, but we do have a very open API where most meetups are open and public, and you can hack away. We put a lot of effort into making sure that API is really well documented, and you guys, Startup Grind made something interesting with it, so you can. There's a lot of people doing all kinds of analysis of the trends and seeing what's going on. No, we don't. We have no. There's once in a while we have to respond to police about something, but yeah.
Great. Can we give Scott a big round of applause? Flew out from New York for this meetup.